This is State Representative Kerry Condata inviting you to watch our new and improved 12th District 2.0 show. Guest hosts John Wise and Shiloh Shower bring it all home with yours truly, Kerry Condata. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 12th District in session. This is Kerry Condata. That's right, just Kerry Condata, a recovering politician. I am officially off the hook. Keith Gaynor is now your state representative as of Monday the 14th, and the session has begun. We will be hearing from both Keith and Mike Steele weekly on this show. Later in this show, we will have a preview from Mike Steele, and then next week we'll be going live to the Olympia to get the comments after the first week of session from both of your state representatives. We have a lot to talk about before Mike Steele today. We want to review the session. We want to review the budgets and talk about what is happening now in this first week of the session. So get ready, buckle down, because it's time to go in session.
Have a fun video you'd like to see featured on NCW Life? Email us at newsphotos@ncwlife.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Again, the 12th District in session. The session has begun in Olympia. This is your reporter now, Kerry Condata, a full-time employee with NCW Life and Solion Broadcasting. It's great to be aboard this wonderful TV station, and I hope you're watching our news and the other programming that we provide weekly on this great, great channel. All right, here it goes. We're going to talk about the session, and we're going to start right off with what's happening in the first week. Obviously, bills are dropping right and left. We're going to start to review some of those bills as they come on. There's a few that have already been dropped that are kind of interesting. Concerning funding for the governor's security and transportation while traveling outside of Olympia. As you know, the governor was traveling all over the United States in the past year. He's been talking about a potential run for president, and we've been footing the bill to the tune of wiping out the state patrol budget entirely, and I'm sure that'll come up in the budget process this year, but this is a bill that says he's going to pay his own way when he goes outside the state. Another one. Prohibiting a government database for law-abiding citizens regarding legal firearms. This would kind of preempt the idea of 1639, which is still under scrutiny by the courts, but 1639 does provide for a database or a registry in the future, and this bill would eliminate that possibility. And then, of course, there is things like focusing the Growth Management Act on larger counties. This has been tried several times, saying that the Growth Management Act is far more applicable to Seattle than it is to Colville. And I think that certainly is meritorious, has some merit. But we'll see what happens. It hasn't gone anywhere. That bill's been floated several times. And of course, there's always a bill like this in the mix, designating the Pacific razor clam as the state clam. Now, that's a big deal. That would be the Pacific razor clam as the state clam. We see them every year. All right, so the bills are flying. They will be put out to the different committees. That's how this works. And the committee chairman in each committee, which was a Democrat now. The Democrats have both sides, the Senate and the House. They will decide what bills are heard, and then they will have a hearing. They will be put up for hearing. And if they get through the hearing process and that same director of that particular committee is going to pass it along, he will or won't, or she will or she won't. They decide. So these bills go through a lot of checks and balances. First, it has to get to a hearing, then it has to have a hearing, and then the chairman has to decide whether this moves forward. If it does, it goes to rules, and then the Rules Committee decides whether it'll even go on the floor for a vote. Remember, once it goes to the floor for a vote, if it's voted out, it goes over to the Senate and starts that entire process through the committee process again. And frankly, if that particular chairman on the other side doesn't want to hear that bill, it can stop right there, even after all of that. So that's how it works, and you're going to see that starting to happen right now. The hearings will be scheduled. You won't see any floor action for a while. There'll be some speeches and some regular introductory type sessions on the floor, but the voting on the bills will come much later. Also, the governor's budget will be the first thing up in the Appropriations Committee. It's traditional to have one of the first meetings with the governor or a governor's representative talking about the initial budget put forth by the governor, which was a shocker this year. As you remember, we reviewed this earlier. $55 billion budget, including about $4 billion in brand new taxes, a capital gains tax, a rather huge capital gains tax, a B&O increase of 66% on service businesses. This is already rippling throughout the state of Washington. Many service-type businesses could not afford a 66% increase in their B&O tax because they can't pass that along to the customer like they can a conventional sales tax. And of course, a real estate excise increase, taking advantage of a fairly good real estate market, although that market is starting to taper. They want to take advantage of those big transactions and increase the real estate excise tax. So this will be talked about. The governor will present that budget, and then, of course, the Appropriations Committee will go to work on their own. The House will have a budget, the Senate will have a budget, and somewhere down the road they'll all be reconciled. In the mix of all this, the Finance Committee will take a look at each of those taxes, because the Finance Committee handles the tax end of it. As you know, I was on both Finance and Appropriations, one of very few legislators that have served on both for many, many years. I got to see both sides of the equation, and all this will be happening in the next few weeks as they try to put together a final budget that has to be done and voted out by April 30th. That is the goal. Now, there's also a capital budget, which you'll hear more about from Mike Steele in our second segment and into the future. We'll keep tabs on the capital budget, which, provides for projects in different areas, buildings and things of that nature, water systems, whatever. Generally, a lot of it's around education, buildings for schools and for colleges, but there is a lot in the capital budget. We'll be talking more about that. Wow. Another big bombshell beyond the $55 billion budget, general budget, is this transportation package that has been put on the table. And of course, the most controversial part, a $15 flat rate carbon tax. That's right, it's been turned down twice by the voters. It is back on the table, this time in a transportation package rather than in a general fund package. Also includes a 6-cent per gallon increase in the fee. We are the third highest gas tax in the nation. I think this would put us either at number 2 or number 1. We'll check into that. It also, another interesting piece, a statewide transportation impact fee of $2.50 per square foot for commercial buildings, and a $1 per square foot for residential and manufacturing. This is a kind of indirect property tax, an additional property tax. Wow, I've never heard that one. That's a new one. And then sales tax increase on auto parts sales tax increase on bicycles, and a sales tax increase on rental cars as well, an increase in the electric vehicle fee. Now that they've got you switched to electric vehicles, they want to charge more to use them, and a variety of other fee increases throughout the system. This transportation package is worth $10 billion and will fund a number of projects, which we will cover as it unfurls in front of us. So transportation budget, huge transportation package, capital budget, and of course that $55 billion general budget from the governor. Also just launched in the last week or two, as if $55 billion wasn't enough, and this is not financed in the $55 billion budget that I'm aware of, is a public option for health care, bringing back the basic health care plan for everyone. The cost of that will be astronomical. Frankly, that was supposed to be addressed under Obamacare, and as the good governor has told us, that has failed. He's one of the first Democrats I've seen almost say that Obamacare failed. It did. And he's saying we can't sustain where we're going, too many people uninsured. I thought that was supposed to get fixed. It didn't. And so now he's talking about a public option for everyone in the state of Washington. If it's like California, that would include probably illegal immigrants as well. So there you have it. It's quite a lineup between the budget and the transportation suggestions, and now a free health care program for everybody. Of course, this is setting up a single-payer health care program. The new governor of California is doing exactly the same thing. You'll probably see Oregon follow suit as the left coast runs hard to the left. And that's what I think we're going to be seeing throughout this session, is a strong move to the left. I don't think it's going to sit well with a lot of folks outside of Seattle, but we'll find out. And you're going to hear it direct every week right here from Mike Steele and, of course, Keith Gaynor, our newest state representative. They'll both be Skyping in with us every week to tell us how it's going. That starts next week. For right now, we're going to take a quick break, come back, and talk to Mike Steele on a preview of what he expects in this session as well. We'll be right back.
Is your vehicle in need of a quick oil change or tune-up before hitting the road this summer? Stop by Quick Lube and Tune, the home of the good guys at 610 South Wenatchee Avenue.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 12th District in session. Well, we are, as we said, on our way to session. It's getting started as we speak. But we had one last interview with a good friend and my colleague, Representative Mike Steele, before he went off to session. Mike, it's great for you to be here live in the studio, probably the last time for a while.
Yes.
Late start on the 14th, so you're going to be there all the way through probably April 30th.
Yes.
Which is really extended out, but that's the way those long sessions work.
Looking forward to it, but 105 days.
Have you got a place to live?
I do.
Because that's the hardest part sometimes over there.
It is.
So that's good. You've got that squared away.
I do.
And you're still going to have to do some commuting because you've got some events back home to go.
Yeah.
Winterfest is what I'm thinking of here shortly, and lots of other things going on with your chamber job.
Yep.
And as it is, most of us end up with 2 jobs out of this thing because it's just the way it works. All right, so you got your committees finally.
Finally.
I know you waited long enough. It was a really long wait this year, and boy, it was worth the wait, though.
It was.
You have really set yourself up well. Let's start with education. Obviously, ranking member on education. That's a pretty high post.
It is. You know, I was honored to be named ranking member. It's a pretty deep and dense policy area, as you know.
Yes.
It's the largest portion of the state's general fund budget, so there'll be a lot of hard work. I don't think we're out of the woods yet with McCleary. I think
I was going to ask you about that. I think that's
back.
the big question, is that it seems like there's settlement from the court, some settlement from the legislature, but it looks to me like the schools aren't real happy with the situation. So what do you see potentially happening with that?
Well, you know, we've looked at this every which way from Sunday, and the courts did say we've satisfied the McCleary obligation, so that's one piece of it. Mm-hmm. But as you've alluded to, you know, we've been working with these schools, and in our district, as you know, we represent 29 different school districts. That's more than any other legislative in the state. And I've talked to most of those folks, and they're worried. They're feeling a pinch with this levy swap. One of the things that I'm going to work really hard on as we move into session for clarity with OSPI and others is, where did the $8 billion go that we infused?
That's certainly a good question, because it seems like when you talk to these schools that they just don't feel like they've got a big boost. I think the teachers even feel like they need more, and it's like, really?
Yeah.
That's a huge increase. So you're going to track that down and tell us where that $8 billion went.
That's a big thing, you know, and as you know, Carrie, the budgets aren't just passed with numbers. The budgets
Right.
are passed with words and direction from the legislature on how we
Yes.
want those numbers to work. And we created a do no harm clause in the McCleary decision.
I remember that.
Very big piece, a pivotal piece, if you will, of the decision, because it says any school district that was receiving money will not receive less than what they were. Now, they may not receive more, but they won't receive less. They should not be in these positions that we're hearing about. So that's a big priority for me, is to get to work and find out where that money went.
Boy, absolutely. I think that will be the key. And then, of course, I think there'll be a big push to raise those property tax numbers back up at the local level, which is what started the whole McCleary argument to begin with. So now we do expect a small property tax decrease at the state level. That's in place. Probably can't change that right away.
Right.
So that's probably okay, but we'll see what happens with the local levies, which are currently capped at $1.50, I believe.
Correct.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next budget, because you're on 2 budget committees.
I am.
Which, again, is unusual for a relatively a sophomore, let's just
There
say.
you go.
And you are on capital budget, which you've been on, and that you're now also assistant ranking on
Yes,
that.
they elevated me to that
And then
position.
you're on appropriations, which we'll get to in a minute. But capital budget, where are the priorities there for you this year?
Well, that's an exciting committee. I really enjoy doing the work on that committee. You know, that one of my big priorities as we head into this new legislative session is workforce housing. And what can the capital budget do through infrastructure strategies in our local district and around the state to help reduce the cost of housing, especially in places like the 12th legislative district, where housing prices are pretty incredible. The median home price in Lake Chelan is now over $450,000, and the vacancy rate here in Wenatchee, as you know, Carrie, is less than 1%. So what can we do from the capital budget side of things to maybe influence positively?
And you really don't think of capital budget as that kind of a committee, but it really is a big part of what they do. And then, of course, there's all kinds of other potential projects that could be throughout the district. We've done projects in Brewster with water systems and those kind of things. Are there more of those? And
Absolutely.
And of course, the college. We don't want to leave out the college. There's another big building due in that college to finish up that design, because there is one left to do.
That's right, and they're actually ranked pretty high on the one thing I really appreciate about the community colleges on the capital budgets. They get together collectively statewide and prioritize a list of projects between them.
Wow, that's
so
great.
when that list is presented to the capital budget, we typically don't mess with it. We fund to the level that we have money. And whoever is above that line gets their project. And luckily, Wenatchee Valley College is pretty pretty well above that line, so we're excited about that.
Wow, so ranking on education, assistant ranking on capital budget, and let's top it all off with a stint on appropriations, my favorite committee, of course, and the one that takes by far the most hours. By now you've seen the governor's proposed budget, which I think was a shocker to all of us who really believed that he would definitely stretch, but not that far.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Is that realistic? What do you think the response will be? Obviously, you got less numbers now. We have 41 people on the Republican side.
Yeah.
You've got more Seattle-type legislators on board. What do you think will happen there?
Look, you know, I really don't think this budget should be about partisan politics. I think that living within your means is a principle that all of us should adhere to in the legislature. And when you have healthy revenues coming into this state, in addition, $2 billion more than what you had in the last biennium, and the governor's proposing to spend $8 billion more than that. I mean, there's a point where you have to sit back and say, okay, I understand you have priorities of government, Governor, but how do we make these things realistically work for all the working families, all the middle-class families in our districts and across the state? And when you've increased state spending by 75%, since 2011, no one can sustain a budget like that in our own households. So why would we apply that principle to the state? It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, and I think the fear, Mike, is that as long as I was there 16 years, we've seen the ups and downs. I saw one of the worst recessions we've ever seen since the 1930s, and it can happen again. On the twist of a news story, things can tank. We've seen what happened to the stock market in the last few weeks. So I think the concern, particularly for me, is not only higher taxes, which are pushing the business community to the ragged edge already, but then the fact that what happens when things do turn around and you have this hole that is literally, you just can't fill. Because it gets exponentially larger. That's the thing, is when we were at 23 billion and we were 2 billion short, that's one thing. But at 55 billion being 10 billion short potentially is very scary. But you're going to get immersed in all that in the Appropriations Committee. It's a pretty good sized committee.
It is.
Got a new ranking member this year with Representative Stokesbury, fairly young fella.
Yes.
That smart kid. I think he's going to do just fine. But he's up against some tough demands.
And we want to work with him, you know, to support what he needs, you know. And I think one of the big areas, as someone who's worked with the business community locally now for over 13 years, one of the big areas of concern I have is the drastic increase in B&O taxes.
Oh my goodness, on services, which you can't pass through very easily.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be looking at that and working as diligently as possible to hold the line. I just think that that's the wrong place, and small businesses are already paying the lion's share of the tax in this state. So how do we help them? How do we see some relief?
Well, we'll be talking a lot about that budget later on, probably. In the first few weeks, it'll be mostly committee meetings and hearings, and we'll be bringing up the bills, some of the bigger bills that get introduced. One that's been talked about, and we have to talk about it even though you're not on that committee, your seatmate is transportation. There is a pretty sizable transportation proposal that's been put on the table by Senator Hobbs. What shocks me, and I think most people, is it includes a $15 per ton carbon tax. Now, we have voted this thing down time and time again, and yet here it is under the transportation flag now instead of the budget. How do you feel about that? I mean, is that something that, you know, you think really is going to fly?
Well, I think the legislature is walking a very fine line here. When the state has overwhelmingly said twice that this isn't something they want to support, how then can the legislature go and basically shove it down the throats of the folks? I don't think that's appropriate. I think it could really cause some major damage politically to the other side if they are to push that thing through. Right. And overwhelmingly, I've heard in my district that that's just not something that people want to support.
Well, we have the cleanest power producing state in the country. I mean, it's not like we have a big carbon problem here and we're not going to solve the world's problems. And the other part is we have one of the highest gas taxes already, one of the highest costs of transportation. Fuel prices are high here. And they're talking about 6 more cents on this package. On top of the carbon tax, we have, and there's a bunch of other fees too, by the way, weight fees, but they've got another 6-cent gas tax. Can we sustain another 6 cents when we're the 3rd highest in the nation already? You know,
I really feel like the gas tax is something that we really have to take a look at, because I think it affects our working class and our poorest the most. Those folks that are that need the transportation to get to work and are struggling at the pump to pay the bill. And we think that's the best place to raise taxes.
And they're having to drive further because of the cost of housing. They got to get to the outskirts. So it's a double whammy. You've got all this compounding. And 6 cents puts us into the 75-cent realm. We're talking about $14 to $15 of tax for every time you fill up your car. That's a lot of money. Why aren't we getting more bang for our buck? There's other states that charge a lot less, that have better infrastructure than we do. Why are we not getting our money's worth in this state?
It's a great question, and I think it's time to take a look at the structure associated with transportation infrastructure. Look, I know that infrastructure around transportation is expensive, and if you want projects, you have to pay for them. But I think it's time, long overdue, that we take a look at the structure of that tax, the structure of the transportation budget, and look for ways to really be efficient, because I don't think we are. You know, we look at what we need and what we want. They're two very different things.
Right.
And so what does maintenance look like, and what does preservation look like, and then what does new project? What does a new project mean?
And Mike, I got to tell you, I think that's where it's really going to catch up with you guys, is the maintenance and preservation side. We always talk about these mega new projects and new highways and all this. It looks great on paper, but we don't think about the 13 bridges in the Met-Howe Valley that are all substandard at this point. At some point, they've got to be fixed.
Yep.
So I think that's a challenge for you, particularly in an area out here where we have a lot of older infrastructure.
We have a lot of older infrastructure, and we have a lot of road miles.
Yes.
You know, that's the thing that people forget about our rural districts.
Yes.
There are a lot of road miles. I mean, as you know, just under 9,000 square miles.
Yeah.
For our district.
Big
so
district.
There's a lot of road in there, and I think, as you alluded to, those bridges are a real big piece, and we need to start working with the Department of Transportation to look at how they phase maintenance and preservation, because I think we're going to get hit. You know, and we won't be able to afford that major preservation project that I see in the future.
Well, and if you have a bridge fail on that Met-Howe Road, there is no alternatives. I mean, that's the problem with some of the roads we have around here. There isn't a lot of alternatives. All right, Mike. Well, I want to wish you the best over there. You've got some amazing assignments. Is there anything you'd like to add, folks, before you head over? Tell us how we can reach you. I mean, folks are going to want to be able to contact you via email.
Yes.
And also, is it 1-800? I think it's 1-800-532-6000.
That's
we'll
correct.
put that
That's
up on the screen. The hotline, 1-800-532-6000 is the hotline. That does get directly to you. You get those printouts. But how else can they reach you?
They can certainly reach me via email, and it's just mike.steele@leg.wa.gov. Call my office directly. Those numbers you can find on the legislative website just by visiting Washington State Legislature. You can find our phone number. Real simple and easy. Would love to talk to anyone that wants to call the office and share their concerns. Appreciate the tremendous support. Looking forward to Representative-elect Gaynor, working with him as a new seatmate. Really appreciate the legacy you've left there at the legislature, and it'll be interesting to see how we fill that void.
Well, it'll be fun watching from the outside looking in. You guys are both going to do a great job, and we're going to get to talk to you every week, and I think that's really important for people to get the news unfiltered, straight on, and you're going to get it right here. Mike, we're going to take a quick break, come back. Thanks, Mike, for being here, and we're going to be in session next week.
Get the fastest internet available in North Central Washington by switching to LocalTel and get speeds up to 1,000 meg. Call 888-8888 today or go online to localtel.net.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. A quick preview from Mike Steele of the session, which is now in motion. We will go live next week with both representatives to talk about their first week in session, see what's the direction, what's going on. It's going to be fun every week to check in with them. We'll have the news and the updates. We'll have the bills for you as we move forward. There is a lot to talk about and a lot going on in Olympia. We're going to cover it all here. And don't forget, we still will touch on federal issues. We'll be talking and watching that immigration system very closely because it does pertain to the 12th District. It makes a big difference here. And we'll be following that as well, and also local issues as they come up. But for now, we are going to stick tight with Olympia, watch what goes on. It's a big year, and it could have a lot of effect on you in more ways than one. This is Kerry Condotta, just Kerry Condotta, that recovering politician, with you on the 12th District 2.0, or now the 12th District in session. We'll be back next week, direct from Olympia.
For all the latest news in North Central Washington, go to ncwlife.com or find us on Facebook. Got a news tip? Email us at news@ncwlife.com or call 888-2020.